Well, hey everybody, this is Pastor Nate, and I want to welcome you to our very first Growth Group Leader audio training. Our goal with these is to provide you regular training sessions that will help you grow as a leader, and ultimately to help your group members grow as well in their relationship with the Lord and also in their relationship with each other. And you know, in past seasons, we've done these training sessions in person, but the fact is we know that you guys are busy and you have full schedules. And even by virtue of being a growth group leader, you're already committing extra time every week to leading that group. And so we didn't want to take more time out of your schedules. We'd rather bring the leader training to you. So that's what this is. And before I introduce our guests today, I just wanted to remind you, first of all, what our vision is as growth group ministry. And hopefully this will sound very familiar to you. The vision of growth groups is to love God, to grow people, and to serve our city. If that sounds familiar, hopefully it should. That's the first three parts of our vision as Cornerstone Church. And that's on purpose because growth groups are a microcosm of our church, our larger church. And the design there is that growth groups would help take our larger vision and bring it down into a smaller group of people. Our hope is that these wouldn't just be, pie in the sky kinds of goals, but that they would really be things that you would latch onto and think about and remember as you're leading your groups. Leaders, you guys are doing an awesome job in supporting our vision here. And so I just want to say, keep it up. Keep up the great work that you've been doing. And let's inspire each other to grow and to raise the bar of excellence. With that, let me introduce the two guests that I have with me today. Abby Newton is one of the members of our growth group leadership team, and she also leads a women's growth group that's a hybrid of in-person and virtual together. So welcome, Abby.
Thanks.
And my second guest, I think, will be well known to you. Pastor Andy leads a growth group that was one of the first to take the leap from in-person into virtual. So welcome, Andy.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, and Abby, looking forward to the conversation with you as well as you, Nate.
Yeah, thanks. Well, let's jump right into it here. So I'll start with you, Andy. What's one of the differences about leading a virtual group than an in-person one? What kind of adjustments have you had to make?
Yeah, I think the in-person group, when we have people walking into our living room sort of one by one, you have those impromptu conversations that are really, really valuable. Hey, how you doing? And those one-on-one connections. In a virtual setting, you have a little bit of that because if you're on, I always try to be on 10 or 15 minutes before the meeting starts so that if people want to log on early and we can chit-chat. But you have to be more intentional about it. And then you've got some of those awkward, you're talking to somebody else tunes in. And so I think for me, really just intentionality, being a little bit more systematic and making sure that everybody gets heard and gets to talk and those things. And even if not everybody's comfortable talking in the context of the study itself, with our group, we always start by asking people to give reports, and just report sounds a little more official than it is, but just like, how are you doing, and what's been new in your life these last couple of weeks. And so we just go around the horn and in a more casual setting, in our living room, we might not do that because that would just happen more intuitively or naturally. We're intentional about that. So I think that's one of the things. And then just reading people, I think it's really important for a leader to try to be attentive to the people in the group. And so you're looking for ways to engage people and that person that's really shy or introverted or whatnot, to find appropriate ways to draw them out. So I'm really big on watching the screen, and if there's any indication that they're going to talk, I try to jump on it. So if I see Abby reaching for her mute switch on Zoom, but somebody else starts talking before her, she's going to back off. But I'm making sure I'm going to come back when that person's done. Abby, you were going to say something, weren't you? Why don't you share that with us? So just a couple things.
Yeah, that's great. That's so helpful. Thanks, Abby. How about you? How has it changed for you as you've moved into a virtual group? What's some of the adjustments you've had to make?
I think one of the biggest differences, my group is a lot of moms with young kids, and one thing that's been nice about attending in person in the past was that we had childcare. Obviously, that's been harder to come by with COVID especially. So It's been a lot of fun, though, to have our kids, in the room with us. Sometimes they're photobombing. Sometimes they're, asking for snacks or coloring on my notes. But I think it's a lot of fun for all the ladies to interact with each other's kids in ways that we don't get to normally when we're in person because they're all in the nursery. I've even seen, people have their cats pop in on the screen, and it's just fun to get a glimpse into their lives at home. But it's also a little bit of a challenge to keep your kids entertained and, keep them out of mischief when you're trying to talk or share with each other.
Now, did you rehearse that to have your daughter jump in right there on the scene?
No, that was just perfect
That's
timing.
pretty awesome, I might
Right.
say. Yeah.
That's right on.
Perfect.
Yeah. What surprised you about Zoom? Have there been some good things about having Zoom meetings that you've really enjoyed?
Honestly, I think one of the best things is just how much easier it is to meet together when you have other things going on. One of the ladies in my group works, I believe, in Loyal or something like that. But if she were to drive all the way in for our Bible study and then try to make it back to work, she'd have to leave 15 minutes early. But she can join at home and leave just in time for work and not miss out on anything. Or last winter, even before COVID started, we had a lot of moms that, my kids got the sniffles, I have to keep them home, and sometimes would have to miss 3 weeks in a row. So that's one thing that's been really nice about virtual is that people don't have to feel like they have to miss out because somebody's sick or because they have something else going on. I think I even had somebody out of town, and she still, joined because she really wanted to be part of the Bible study. So physical location isn't as big of a limitation as it used to be.
Yeah, there's a real convenience to it. Abby, you and I are in a different growth group together too. And do you remember one time we had someone tune in while they were driving? They just put their phone up on the dashboard and just listened in. It was great.
It's not illegal at all, is it?
Not at all.
And we don't. Just so you know, we're not condoning illegal activity here at Cornerstone. All right, but
It might have been hands-free. That's the rule, right? Nice. You have to be hands-free.
Yeah. We'll put a copyright or a disclaimer. In there. Yeah.
Let's not tell our insurance company, okay?
Right. I mean, obviously, there's some good things to the virtual experience, but I think probably we'll jump to some of the annoyances too. What are some of the difficulties and how have you worked through some of the annoyances of dealing with Zoom or another virtual platform?
Yeah, I think just working through the learning curve, for folks. And so, some people, you're in a different environment, just like you would say you show up at a brand new church and you're going to growth group. Zoom almost feels like a brand new, scene. And so I think that brings out people's insecurities. And sometimes the way they cope with that is by talking more than they otherwise might, and they don't realize that they're sort of taking over the conversation. Because once you get your mute switch off, you can kind of have that conversation. So for me, working through that, it's just been engaging, some of those people in advance and helping them be comfortable with the technology. I met with a gal on Zoom prior to her joining our group and just walked her through, like, this is how you do your mute switch. And it's stuff that, as a growth group leader, you're not necessarily going to be passionate about, but when you consider, how that influences the participation in the group, it's actually kind of fun, and it's a good way to have a more personal connection with a person. So I think just working through, like you said, some of the technology issues, training people to ride their mute switches. By this time, a year into this, people are so much better. At the beginning, nobody had a clue that there was even such a thing as a mute switch, right? So now people kind of get it, and it's good. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like when we go back to in-person, like we're going to want to give people mute switches for the in-person meetings?
I've heard that they want to give a pastor a mute switch, but I'm going to try not to let that happen. So.
Yeah. Do you find that you need to be more of almost a referee a little bit, because there's a little bit of a lag with Zoom, and so people may start talking over each other, and do you have to feel like you have to kind of call on one person, or how does it change just your leadership of a group when you're in that setting as opposed to in person?
I think for me, it's just having my eyes on the screen, and it's easy to look at yourself, on the screen and like make sure you look okay, whatever. But just trying to scan that screen and make sure, and seeing where people are at. And our groups have been really good about about backing up. If both people's talk at one time, usually it's deferent to the other person, but just more that from a standpoint of drawing out that person that didn't get to talk, because then they kind of feel insecure about it, and I stepped on that person. I don't know if I should have said anything, and I just want to celebrate people talking, so I'm always looking to draw that out.
Yeah. Well said. Abby, going back to you and talking about your switch from an in-person to a hybrid in-person and virtual group. You've got a group that has people from all different walks of life, all women, but some are very comfortable with technology and it's a huge part of their life, but some are, it's scary for them. And the idea of turning on Zoom, they wouldn't even know how to begin. How have you navigated that? Because you've been very successful in getting people involved in your group.
Yeah, so a couple of different aspects I feel like kind of play into that. One is just because of COVID, because of the social isolation, people just really crave fellowship and social interaction. So if the only way we can get it is virtually, people have been very enthusiastic about just even seeing each other's faces, getting into fellowship with each other. So some of it's come naturally. It does help too that we offer, at least in our case, an in-person option, and people, I feel like the first time everybody that was a little uncomfortable with online was in person, and they could kind of see how we do it and kind of get used to it, and then maybe have 1 week where they can't show up, and then they've already been kind of prepped for this is how you join. There's been a lot of cool interactions where I've seen them help each other. Somebody will lean over and, push this button and look for that, and get really excited for each other when they figure it out. And I even had somebody high-fiving each other. They were so excited that they were figuring it out. But
we're not supposed to do that, Abby.
Right.
Virtual high five.
Another disclaimer, please, and that's sorry.
We did a tutorial. We were talking about online resources because not everybody has a big old concordance or a big commentary. And so we were talking about online resources for Bible study, or even just how to access the handouts and the materials. And they were like, well, I tried to follow that website and there was nothing there, or I tried to do this and I don't know how to do that. And so I actually just took 10 minutes and just did a tutorial. I shared my screen and just went to the website and said, do this, click here. I also find it really helps to not just say, look for the mute button, look for the camera button, but, in your lower left corner, look for the button that looks like a microphone. That's your mute button. Look for the button that looks like an old-fashioned camcorder. I feel like if you're more descriptive, it's a little easier to find what you're looking for.
Yeah. Andy, one of the things that could potentially be really awkward in a virtual meeting is how do you do prayer? And so you've had that, I guess, in a couple different occasions, and maybe give us some advice on how prayer works best in a Zoom meeting.
In a growth group context, I think it is tough. And one of the unique dynamics for our group is we have a lot of folks that have never been in a growth group before, that are maybe new to our church, even new to the faith, recently. And I love that dynamic. That's the kind of dynamic we wanted. But I do think the virtual piece makes it harder for them to feel comfortable to pray. So what I've been doing is just kind of inching that direction. So last week I said, guys, we haven't really asked you to pray, and I've just led the prayers, but I just want you to know in a couple weeks I'm going to ask you to participate. And so again, sort of that soft approach with people, not to say all of a sudden, here's a microphone, pray, but to say this is where we're going. And then so we got to last night, and I said, okay, I'm going to ask Christy to start. Christy's my wife, and she did, and then I'm going to leave some time here, and if there's a couple minutes of awkward silence, it's okay, and I kind of anticipated there would be. So again, I'm trying to not create a negative experience for people, but to prepare them and allow silence to be acceptable. And guess what? There was 2 minutes of silence, or however long, we waited, and nobody prayed, and that's fine. And I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just prayed at the end. And frankly, 2 minutes of silence in the middle of a day, that ain't bad, right?
True.
So we did that, and I'll come back to it again next time. And I think my experience is that in these kinds of things over time, people become more and more comfortable, and it'll take somebody having some courage to be the first one that's not the pastor's wife or the pastor, to do it. Yeah. But I think acknowledging it's not easy. It's tricky. So I've done a lot of the praying, and if you're a growth group leader, I would think that's appropriate, in these contexts. But also to start to inch towards, hey, let's pray together and let's pray for each other and some of those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, and first of all, I'll just say, what a great leadership principle that you're showing here, of giving people kind of an idea of what's coming down the pike, and not putting them on the spot. But you've mentioned 2 different ways that you've done that, and just letting people get used to a new idea. And I think that's just a great thing for us to learn just as leaders. I also wanted to mention, I'm 2 weeks into a virtual group that I helped start as well. And one of the things that's been helpful for us, at the very beginning of the meeting, we say, we're going to pray at the end and collect prayer requests. And we're just going to ask one person to pray. Who would be willing to do that? And then there's that awkward silence, and that's okay. And then someone each time has said, I'll do it. And they take notes, and then they pray. And so that's just another option just to offer to you guys.
Love that. I might try that.
Yeah. Abby, just switching gears here a little bit, you have a unique group because your group is hybrid. So you've got some people in the room with you, and you have some women that are virtual. And so to help us navigate that a little bit, how have you made that work? What are maybe some of the challenges, and how do you get through this?
I think one of the biggest challenges is people online being able to hear people in the room and vice versa. Or even being able to see each other. So as far as the visual, I have 2 devices. One that I don't connect to audio because I've learned you get really bad feedback if you connect both devices. But I have one device that's facing the room so that whoever's online can see everybody in the room. And then the other one obviously is facing me for my discussion. And, I use my computer a lot to pull up either slides or documents or that kind of thing. So that takes care of the visual. The audio is a little bit harder. I hook my computer up to the TV so that at least the people online can be heard really well because I can turn the volume up on the TV. It's a little trickier with people in the room. Sometimes I remind them to speak louder, and sometimes I just have to repeat what they said so that people online can hear.
And anything to add as we've been talking here, anything that we may not have covered yet or you wanted to just add to what we've talked about already?
Yeah, I think just having fun with it, and the technology can be intimidating. I think just acknowledging that it can be awkward sometimes. Like, yeah, there's a lag time. Sometimes you open up your mute switch at the same time and you talk over each other. So what? Yeah, sometimes your kid interrupts, while you're talking, and so what? It's okay. And I think just having fun with it. We had last night, one of our families has a special needs child, and she's talked about the child, but we hadn't gotten to meet him. And so last night at the end, a few of us were hanging on afterwards. And I try to, as a leader, not be the first to hit end meeting for all. If people want to linger, just hanging out a little bit. And so here she said to one of the other people that knew her son, hey, can I bring so-and-so to you? And he'd love to see you, and can you say hi? And she basically said, well, Andy, you can stay too. and which is great. So we got to meet her son, and it's not, I remain convinced that in-person connections are vital, and so this isn't a perfect solution to everything, but it's a really good solution to where we're at now, and it might be a better solution in some contexts ongoing. So we might keep meeting in some Zoom capacity, in some capacity via Zoom, just because it's convenient and because we can engage people that way. You can have personal connection. It's not a either or, one or the other. So it was really sweet. She brought her son. We said, hey man, how's it going? He said hello, and there we got to connect with him. We wouldn't have done that if it was in person because he wouldn't have come, Yeah. So I think celebrating the opportunities and engaging them, and, we can, I don't like Zoom, I get that. But here we are, and man, we've had some great discussions. I've been in tears listening to my growth group members multiple times share about how they're growing and the things that they're learning.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm hearing a couple recurring themes here. One is just acknowledging that that not everything works, or something could be awkward, but we're going to press through it. But then affirming, the good that is happening in the midst of it. And I want to thank you two for being early adopters here, and just you were committed to your groups first. And so your goal was just, okay, how do we make it work in this virtual world? And you pushed through it, and there were awkward points along the way, but now you've got 9 months of stories to share about, relationships developed and prayers prayed and, disciples made, along the way that we would have had to just put pause on otherwise. So thanks for that. And just, again, to say for those of you that are more inclined to the in-person groups, that this can still be a great option for one of those, 12 inches of snowfall, and you're all home. You can connect together and still have your group meet, or in the middle of summer when somebody's on vacation, you can still get together and check in. So there's opportunities, I think, to use this even past pandemic. Well, just in closing, I do want you all to know that Cornerstone does have a Zoom account. So if you would like to explore options, perhaps you're an in-person group that wants to add a virtual element or have a hybrid group to allow some people in that aren't comfortable being in person, we'd love to help you get that set up. If you have any questions, come to me, let me know how I can help you. I'd love to help you make that transition as much as possible. But again, just to echo Andy's words, a thank you for pressing through and for continuing to engage people and engage them with the Lord. And I know that Jesus is going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. So thanks for joining us for our first ever audio leadership training. And we look forward to doing some more of these with you later. But continue pressing on, and we'll check in with you guys later. Thanks to Andy and Abby for being a part of this.
You're very welcome. Thank you.